A disturbing new report shows just how much money Americans unwittingly handed over to military contractors through their tax dollars in 2022 alone. So not only did this report show how much money we're spending on defense, it also compared it to how little money we're spending on various social services that would materially improve our lives. So let's get right to it. The Institute for Policy Studies National Priorities Project found that on average, American taxpayers contributed $1,087 to Pentagon contractors, compared with just $270 for K through 12 education. The top military contractor, Lockheed Martin, received $106 from the average taxpayer, while just $6 went to funding renewable energy. Okay, let's pause for a second. I love the way they did this study because it's hard to really personalize giant sums of money that the federal government funnels over to defense, right? We'll talk about the nearly, or at this point, over $800 billion that is allocated for the Pentagon every year. But how does that affect you personally? How does each individual American, or how much does each individual American spend toward these private defense contractors? And on average, it's over $1,000 in just 1 year. So, by the way, that's not the only disturbing finding in this report. The average taxpayer paid $74 for nuclear weapons and just $43 for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which I'm sure some of our Republican viewers have no problem with. I have a major problem with us prioritizing nuclear weapons over, bolstering institutions that have to do with decisions about our health. But let me continue. In addition to that, if you paid taxes for 2022, you likely paid $298 for the top 5 military contractors versus just $19 for mental health and substance abuse. Let's not forget the fact that we're still dealing with a drug and overdose epidemic in this country. I mean, close to 100,000 people are now dying every year thanks to drug overdoses. But I mean, God forbid we appropriately fund the services necessary to help those who are struggling with substance abuse. We're not done yet, there's more. So in 2022, taxpayers on average paid $70 for deportations and border patrol and just $19 for refugee assistance. I mean, are you guys really surprised by any of this? I guess I'm not surprised by it, but it's still so incredibly infuriating. And again, when you personalize it like this, when you assign a dollar amount and then compare it to how little we're spending on the services that we so desperately need, it's just so maddening. And finally, give you another example. Last year, the average taxpayer spent $20 for federal prisons, but just $11 for anti-homelessness programs. So in this larger breakdown, you can see that the only thing we gave more tax dollars to, and this is a good thing, is Medicare and health overall at 27.1 cents for every dollar. Okay, so you see this visual, it's kind of divvying up a dollar based on what we're prioritizing in our spending. Pentagon, of course, is massive at 17.8 cents on the dollar. Then you've got interest on our debt, which I'm actually starting to get more and more concerned about. We are spending a pretty significant portion of our resources every year on just servicing the debt that we have. So that's 12.9 cents for every dollar. And it is a problem. We spent 5.4 cents on every dollar for veterans, 2.5 cents for housing and community, so on and so forth. You get the point. What we tend to prioritize is funneling money from the taxpayer to a small number of private military contractors. And those contractors certainly spend quite a bit of money on campaign donations in every election cycle. And as a result of that, they just have more of a voice than ordinary people do. I mean, you do have teachers unions, you do have some folks who engage politically and either do endorsements or fund politicians themselves. But those unions really cannot compete with defense contractors. And I think that we're seeing the outcome of that system in these numbers as we speak. And in 2022, global military spending also hit an all-time high, right? So it's not just the United States. We're seeing a pretty significant increase in military spending worldwide, which is concerning. There just seems to be this push toward war between the United States and China. Really worried about that. There's all sorts of military exercises happening near China with the United States and its allies. The Stockholm International Peace Research Institute's annual report showed a 3.7% overall increase in worldwide military expenditures to $2.24 trillion in 2022, including a 13% rise in Europe, the continent's sharpest increase in 3 decades, and that's of course amid Russia's war on Ukraine. But the United States, of course, beats everybody and has for quite some time now. The United States remained by far the world's biggest military spender, with its $877 in expenditures accounting for 39% of the global total in 2022. The US, which is also the world's biggest arms exporter, China and Russia together accounted for 56% of the global total. And finally, just one more visual to give you guys. Let's take a look at this pie chart, because it shows you the share of the world military expenditure of the 15 countries with the highest spending in 2022. And the largest chunk by far is the United States. It really helps you see how much more money we are spending on our military relative to all these other countries, including, you've got Israel, the second largest is, let's see, China. So the second largest is China, but still China is at 13%, whereas the United States is at 39%. So this is how the system works. Money in politics means that corporate interests have a larger voice, a louder voice than ordinary voters. And so while voting is still important, I don't want to minimize that. If you've got defense contractors throwing millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, in some cases hundreds of millions of dollars at these elections, at these politicians are gonna listen to them and what they want. And that is part of the reason why there is so much waste in the Pentagon. That is why they have failed not 1, not 2, not 3, but 5 consecutive audits. They don't know how to account for 61% of their assets. It's just a money sucking machine, and it feels like there's nothing we can do about it. But what we could do about it is change the system and demand that we have publicly financed elections, so no corporation, no moneyed interest have a louder voice than ordinary Americans who take part in our democratic process.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.